Hello and welcome. Today I will be talking about Baccano, Volume 14, 1931, Another Junk Railroad Special Express. This takes place after the events of Volumes 2 and 3. Um, and yeah, uh, this also got this also got adapted into the anime OVAs, and it was originally um, a guiding novel for the audio drama CD, and this is just a revised version of that. It starts off when we get introduced to a character named Who, the childhood friend of Lad Russo. He was the background character for the events of volumes 2 and 3. We get to see how stubborn Lad is and Who not being taken seriously by him when Who tried to convince Lad to drop the train hijacking, which didn't end up happening. And yeah, especially when Who is the nickname that Lad gave him, because Lad already knows Who's real name. Lad mentions Graham, who they didn't invite because the train would be destroyed, and that wasn't part of the plan. Then we move on to the elderly couple from volume 10, and also from prior to the train hijacking. And yeah, that the elderly woman has a bad feeling about boarding the Flying Pussyfoot. Then Elmer arrives to ask if he can buy the tickets off of them, and he boards the train. We briefly see characters from the 2006 manga adaptation that adapted the 1931 arc, named Jocks and Rosetta. They don't have that big of a... It's just a reference to those characters because they appear in that manga. But Ferme actually sneaks onto the train compartment meant for Jocks, so yeah. Afterwards, we move on to Victor Talbot interrogating Huey Laforet, more on an off-record interrogation. Huey reminisces on the witch hunts that took his mother's life and being unable to save his wife, Monica. Then Victor rants about a painful memory that he could inflict onto Huey, and Huey's curious about that. Victor mentions Elmer. Huey's expression was described to be human, so it's told to us that Huey and Elmer really had a strong connection. Huey admitted that Elmer was a lunatic and how people mistook his lunacy for goodwill, and yeah, we've seen that throughout the whole novel. And then Victor confronts Huey on his blueprints. Huey tells him that it was a hobby, which Victor doesn't believe. And Huey states that the ideas they create are fascinating. He admits it's a flaw in his personality. Victor then confronts him on the flamethrower design, as Huey stated that it was due to emotional trauma from the witch hunts, perhaps an inversion of his hatred. Meanwhile, Victor got news of the Lemures taking the Flying Pussyfoot hostage and demanding Huey's release. While Victor kept rambling, Huey thinks about Chane and how she's his ultimate test subject. And he's a terrible father to Chane and Lisa. I know, as much as I like Huey, yeah, Chane deserved a lot better. We move to 1934 with Saint Germain Gustave and his assistant Carol. Carol sees the rainbow as Gustave basically comments on the fairy tale nature of rainbows and how it could be an omen. Gustave urges Carol to consider the legitimacy of the information when Carol tells him that their job wasn't to think, it's to tell people what really happens. Robbers arrived into the compartment, and Gustave made an origami pop gun out of, or popper, it's those things I remember when I was in school, people making and made loud noise that sounded like a gun. But yeah, and he swiftly defeated the robbers. Then Gustave continued to basically say that he was able to be fully physical and mentally prepared during the crisis. Well, Carol questions on why they decided to not get on the train. Gustav told her and remarked that Carol, if she's suggesting to steal rights like Rachel. Graham comes in as Gustav introduced himself, as his tone of voice switched from the one he used when talking to Carol. We learn that Gustav Saint Germain isn't his real name, but a subsequent. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Graham questions how Germain deduced the actions of his group, as we see Graham held malice and perplexion in his voice. Gustav told him, meaning in results that have already occurred will not allow you to change the past. Graham complained that he's not comfortable with knocking the train over due to Carol being a kid. Graham and Gustav proceed to negotiate information, and Graham had threatened both Gustav and Carol about dislocating their joints, as he compared it to putting a price on information. Graham prepared the story of Claire Stanfield's life partner. I liked that Carol thought Claire was a girl. Like, it's such a running joke within the series that Claire is usually a name for girls instead of guys, even though guys use that name. And Claire hates the name Claire. I liked how information and a rainbow were connected. Like, yeah. We hear how Chaney's upbringing was never destined to be good. Both Renee and Huey are terrible parents. That's true. Renee is a psychopath and a klutz whom lacked maternal instinct. And Huey lacking humanity as well, due to being a mastermind. While Chaney is set to free her father out of loyalty, but then there's a man on the Flying Pussyfoot whom set to uproot her world and turn it upside down. You'll see later on in the novel, I think Claire and Chaney's scenes, like, I feel like Chaney takes center in this novel more than any other character. We hop back to January 1932. Chaney, after the train hijacking, is still sent on rescuing her father, well where she was his guinea pig, still showing her loyalty to her father. Huey was put into a patrol wagon, and as Chaney hesitated, wondering what would happen to him, Jacuzzi arrived and got startled when Chaney put a knife against his neck. When he mentioned to Huey the knife was back on his neck, Nice arrives to stop her as Chaney questions if they were trying to use her and her father. Nice told Chaney that they were looking for her and thought if Huey was her relative, as we see Chaney's heart ease a little, but also regretted not. She considered her own name extremely important, as Nice saw Chaney's frustration of her not saving Huey. Nice offered to help. She then reprimanded Jacuzzi because he didn't have permission to leave the hospital. This was after the train hijacking, so he was still injured. Chaney is left wondering why Jacuzzi himself came to check on her, especially since he's supposed to be resting. Jacuzzi fumbles his words and told her that it might have been better if they helped her rescue Huey. He complimented her on the attempt to take on the police for someone else's sake. Even if she had to do it all by herself, those words made her question her solitude and her worldview, especially with the world being that with her and her father. As well as she was also puzzled by the banter between Jacuzzi and Nice. Chaney got used to seeing lies until Jacuzzi came unprepared with protecting himself and Chaney not sensing any lies from him, puzzled by his character. And yeah, we'll see this a lot in the novel where Chaney's kind of struggling between the loyalty of her father and like the love she thinks her father has with her, even though that's not the case. And of course, her friends with Jacuzzi and his gang, as well as a certain redhead. Now at Fred's hospital, Chaney told Jacuzzi the truth, and he already knew and told her he had to spend enough time with her to determine that she was a good person. Jacuzzi became worried when he remembered that there was also another delinquent group, especially their leader. Chaney still couldn't sense Jacuzzi's lies, similar to her interaction with Claire. She's determined to kill Claire for her father's sake, or else she might start to live for someone other than her father. Yeah, I think this novel so far, I like this. Like, if you're a Claire and Chane shipper, this could be a good novel for you, in my opinion. After the events of the train hijacking, Who became an assistant to Fred. Now back in the present, basically, Who told Jacuzzi that if you don't put yourself first, then you'll wind up taking a dirt nap. You're lucky to be alive at all. Jacuzzi questions Who on why he didn't turn him to the Russos. Who told Jacuzzi that unlike Lad, Jacuzzi's practically one of the good guys, and he wouldn't be able to sleep at night if he did turn him in, no matter if the bounty was big. He thanks Who for not turning him in and questions him on why Lad and him were friends. Who told Jacuzzi that Lad wasn't going to kill someone like him? Then Who starts to share his story about Lad to Jacuzzi. Jacuzzi asks why Who kept hanging around Lad. Who couldn't figure out how Lad turned out or what caused it. But then Who told Jacuzzi about his and Lad's childhood friend, Layla. Layla came from a rich congressman's family and was the only one to set Lad straight. Both Lad and Layla mistook their friendship for love. Both of them eloped due to their families being different. Then Layla died, unknown what she died from, but it wasn't Lad. Then Who wonders why he played spectator and doesn't have the courage to stand where Lad does. That's why he's around him to see where Lad ends up. After Who shared too much, he's frustrated on how Jacuzzi had the guts to put himself on the line for the sake of his pals, unlike Who. Who admitted after Layla's death, Lad's urge to kill kept on growing and attracting people like Lua and Graham. I like how Who's basically the opposite of Jacuzzi, in my opinion. Like, Jacuzzi is a wimpy guy, like, he's a crybaby, but has a group around him. And when push comes to shove, he's one of the bravest characters. Whereas Who feels like a coward and couldn't really stand up to Lad, unlike Jacuzzi, who would stand up to people like Lad. We jump to Graham as he rambled and told his sad stories about how Lad got defeated by someone during the train hijacking. And Graham smashes the oil drum he was sitting on. Bounty for Jacuzzi, whose group is also affiliated with Eve Genuard, and decides to kidnap Eve Genuard to lure Jacuzzi for his bounty. And yeah, like, this is a very brief scene, but it's nice that it's added in here. Like, onto Firo and Ennis, where they got the letter from Isaac and Miria about their trip to California and their venture for gold. Firo wonders if they even need to eat, since starving to death isn't a problem with immortality, but Ennis says that immortals could still eat for efficiency. She brought up Sillard not really feeding her and how she's used to it. Yeah, that's a little bit sad. Like, Firo and Ennis lived together, and how Firo lit up with joy when Ennis approved of the food he cooked. It's shown that Ennis had worried that she needed to repay Firo's kindness. Firo's kindness had an ulterior motive. He hoped Ennis had felt the same way as him. Yeah, they took a very long time getting together, or hell, even getting married. Like, like, that's my problem with the ship. Even though it ended up well with them. But yeah, We then go to Firo and Berga as Firo asks Berga how he and his wife Kalia got married, as he told Firo that Kalia proposed. When Berga finds out if it was Ennis and teases Firo about already taking her to bed, Firo denies as Berga brought up the time Firo got kidnapped because he got mistaken as a girl. Berga mentioned to take a page out of Claire's book as Firo was unsure and daydreamed on how to get close to Ennis. Like, Firo getting mistaken as a girl is another funny gag. That Maria went to set up dominoes and Firo wanted to get close to Ennis but got interrupted by Isaac and Miria, whom wanted to see the casino he owns. Then Ennis had a smile when she said, "See you later, Firo." Like, I like this ship. This novel is really good for Claire X Chane and also that scene with Firo X Ennis. But yeah, now we go to the outside of the Alvere and get caught up with Rachel, bothered by seeing Cheslaw after she assumed he died. Then they have a talk which flips her worldview when she found out about immortality. I'd like to mention that in this novel, she wears a dress instead of her coveralls in the OVAs, and yeah, it was a cool design. And she decides to be an info broker to prevent having things like what happened to her dad from happening to other people. It's described that her eyes had been opened to a new world and shine brightly. And like the whole concept of worlds in the series, like Claire having his own world, Chane having her world be her and her father, and now Rachel opening a new world or worldview is interesting, is like pretty interesting in my opinion. But then Claire enters the scene, which scares Ches, and Claire now Felix Walken has dinner with Rachel and asks her advice. The way Claire talks about Chane in modern times could label him as a stalker, but he didn't seem desperate. And yeah, like, that's why Rachel told him to buy something for Chane and suggested clothes. After that, Claire paid for the bill, but put it on Firo's tab, and Firo got confused on who Felix Walken was. It's funny because this is before Firo finds out that Claire changed his name. We go to Millionaire's Row as Chane saw a dress that was sent to her by Claire. Jacuzzi and his gang urged her to put it on. Then she did, but she ends up getting kidnapped by Graham, who mistook her for Eve Ginuard. Underground speakeasy, the Jane Doe, a former member of the Lemurays, Upham, a member who hesitated with Nader's betrayal plan, got interviewed by a fake info broker. Upham told him about his experience with two immortals on the Flying Pussyfoot, and how Elmer saved him from Fairmay, and Fairmay stabbed Upham, but ended up in a tussle with Elmer and Fairmay, and Fairmay got ejected off the train. And yet this kind of makes me wonder, like, what was Fairmay in that train for? I feel like he was in that train to mess with Ches, but wasn't able to. Back to Jacuzzi's group, who got tipped off by Elmer, so that way they can respect Jacuzzi's wishes and take action. Back to the Jane Doe after the interview with Upham. The actor went towards the playwright, who listened in on Upham's story and reveals his name as Victor Talbot. The actor and Victor ran into Jacuzzi, who was asking where the warehouse was. After that, Fairmay, who stole Victor's name, hired the interview to know Upham's name and kills the actor in his apartment. In the warehouse, Graham and Chane fought as she got overpowered due to how she thought he was like Lad Russo. Jacuzzi told them to stop, and Graham doesn't notice the money as Jacuzzi told him about the bounty on himself and for Graham to turn him in. Graham decided not to since he took a liking to Jacuzzi. Then an explosion occurred by, of course, best girl, niece. And Jacuzzi's gang appeared. While Jacuzzi was supposed to come alone, each member told them that they came by themselves individually. But Jacuzzi heard an extra voice, and it was Claire. Chane hesitated to kill Claire and was conflicted about bringing another person into her world where it's only her and her father. She's scared that the past she believed in was going to break. Claire was trying to confess but stumbled. Chane knew he was honest about the confession, and Claire vowed to protect her world as Chane seemed to have accepted him alongside Jacuzzi and his gang. Even in her world, her father never told her she loved him. And yeah, that's why I feel like Chane deserved better and wish he drifts apart from Huey. After that, Graham interrupted, and when Lad got brought up, Claire told him that he was the one that dropped him off the train. Then Graham and Claire fought. They had a back and forth that didn't match the synchronized fight. Graham stops when he noticed Claire hadn't counterattacked throughout the fight, as well as deciding to let Lad be the one to fight Claire. Afterwards, Claire resumed the confession and told her his real name. Then she blushed, and that was her answer. Like, oh, that's a beautiful scene. I love that scene. One of my favorite Claire and Chane scenes. We go back to 1934 after Saint Germain told Graham the information, as Graham lost interest with robbing the train. After that, Shaft stayed behind and revealed that he's a sham vessel. After that, Carol questioned Gustav on inciting a crime. He told her that Mr. Turner, that fat guy from volumes 2 and 3 that Rachel had a beef with because he was responsible for her father's death, I think. Scoffed at the information Gustav gave him and didn't pay him as well as still using the information, making a killing with it. So Gustav had no problem with having Graham robbing Mr. Turner. She told him that was misusing his power, and yeah, she is right, just that I like the sight of Gustav. Damn, Gustav. When the topic of Graham being serious with harming them came up, Gustav would have protected her and casting aside his own life. He tells her that he is counting on her skills. Then Victor finds out someone stole his identity and got a complaint from Mr. Turner, as Huey talks about the electroencephalograph. It's a tongue twister. I would be on Victor's side here and be mad at Huey for saying something like that. And also talks about the speed of civilization evolving, how if all humans were immortal, their physical evolution will stop. If their spirits evolved, maybe 3 centuries weren't enough to fix a twisted character. Victor rants about Huey and Elmer, about another 1,000 years not being able to straighten those two. Then Huey was thinking about Fairmay and how he plays things as a game with stealing an identity of another immortal, and how he would never change. Not since he killed Monica. Fairmay, after killing the actor, and thinks about Ches and Upham, thinking about what he has planned. Elmer walked into Fred's clinic, still trying to find Sillard, while Fairmay, with disdain to Elmer, leaves town for a while. While this novel is a short read, I get it might slow things a bit down, especially if you hear that Volume 15, which is a well received novel, it's like it's a good breather in between the cliffhanger of Volume 13 and what's about to go down in Volume 15. Uh, but yeah, overall, I enjoyed this novel, even though I get it might not be like the top. But if you like the character of Chane Laforet, this is actually a really good novel. I liked how they fleshed her character out throughout the novel. Um, but yeah, I don't have too many negatives. Like Baccano is a very consistent series in my opinion, and even the worst received novel would still be readable to me. Favorite characters: Chane Laforet, Claire Stanfield, or now Felix Walken, Jacuzzi as always, Isaac and Maria, little sprinkles. Elmer. Oh, I feel like Elmer has a very small role in the 1930s. It's only 1931 and 2 that he has a somewhat big role, but he doesn't have that big of a role in the other 1930s. Kind of unfortunate. I would like to have seen it. Then, of course, Graham. We got a little bit of Rachel. I liked her character in volumes 2 and 3. I wish we got more of her in the 1930s. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.